To Senate Bill 242, which requires the Department of Health and Human Services to establish the Psychedelic Medicine Working Group.
My name is Rochelle Wynn. I represent Senate District 3, and to look at some of that information and look at what state legislators are doing across this country. Most recently, I believe, a similar type of bill passed in Missouri and Texas, and we have ballot initiatives in Oregon and Colorado that have had overwhelming support. And the people that come to you are not people that look like they're out of a Woodstock video or have rolled in EDC costumes, but they are first responders, they are firefighters, they are police officers, they are veterans, and they are people that don't traditionally fit the bill of someone that you would think of when we talk about mushrooms or psychedelics.
Good afternoon, Chair Peters and members of the Assembly Health and Human Services Committee. For the record, my name is Kira Fincher. I am a Nevada legislative intern from the University of Nevada, Reno. The Psychedelic Medicines Working Group is a diverse group of people working to end the current mental health crisis that we have in the state. And as you will see in Section 3.5, just to go over a list of some of the members, they will study the effects of euthogens and review federal, state, and local laws and regulations concerning its uses. It is our responsibility to explore alternatives and encourage the ones who protect us, to quote Assemblyman Carter, to heal loudly. It is the least that we can do. And so now I'm going to pass the mic to Assemblyman Carter.
My name is Max Carter with Assembly District 12, and I appreciate all you're doing, because we're doing the same thing, and I'll keep this brief because I know what a struggle it is right now. So, as most people in these chambers know, because I do believe in healing loudly, 6 years ago I lost my wife in a very traumatic way. And working through that odyssey and creating that path that brought me to sitting here in front of you today, I found, like was commented last night during third session, yoga and meditation, learning self-regulation, how to bring that back down. Then through cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy, I learned how to identify what was going on inside of me, the hypervigilance and stuff. Through EMDR, we helped with a therapist, help me take and push some of that hypervigilance and those symptoms of both PTSD and CPTSD back. But I was still dealing with the triggers. I was still dealing with emotional flashbacks. And post-election, I plunged hard. The reason I'm here now is that my psychiatrist is the same neighbor of Rochelle Wynn, Dr. Shaylee Jane. She's a leader in this field. And I went through 8 or 10 ketamine sessions between the election and being what my therapist decided was safe for me to be here in Carson City. Ketamine is a powerful drug that is used in psychedelic therapy, but it's very short duration. It's, those 8 to 10 sessions, if psilocybin would have been able to be used, it would have been 1 or 2 sessions. The antidepressive effects and the long-term effects of ketamine is measured in days or weeks, whereas with psilocybin, we're talking, studies are showing months to years. My constituents have been very vocal, and the stories have been heartbreaking. Most of them start with, my brother did 2 tours in Iraq. My dad did 3 tours in Iraq. My cousin did a tour in Afghanistan. And unfortunately, most all of them end with, but they committed suicide. And if this was in place, maybe they would still be here.
John Dalton. I'm a retired Navy SEAL. I did 23 years in the military as a SEAL and over a decade at a JSOC Special Missions Unit. Regrettably, I also witnessed the impact of trauma on my own teammates and how existing psychiatric therapeutics have failed us in preventing suicide among our nation's top warriors. This is why I believe psychedelic medicine is the solution to this epidemic. It is a very unconventional solution to what is not an unconventional problem, but it's a rampant epidemic. In this vein, fellow SEALs that I know created nonprofit organizations to fly veterans out of the country to legal locations where the use of psychedelics is legal, and the results have been unprecedented success. To my fellow conservative brethren in legislators who may not know this, that included 9 red states, including Texas, with patriots like Dan Crenshaw, Ted Cruz, and Rick Perry, who are leading the way in bipartisan efforts with federal legalization for therapy as it pertains to veterans and even active duty military through the National Defense Authorization Act. In the last 12 months, I've lost 7 SEAL brothers to suicide. That's a massive amount for such a small group of elite warriors, and 2 more to death by alcoholism. I found myself in a really dark place psychologically, struggling. And again, as a SEAL, these things, you don't expect to have something like severe anxiety or depression. These things just, I always, thought this shouldn't happen to me. And I had a couple close friends ask me, or say, hey, John, you need to look at this stuff, this possible psychedelic medical treatments. I said, you know what, guys, I appreciate that. I'm good. I'm not doing that. It just is not my cup of tea. That's not where I am. And it wasn't until, things got worse for me, really bad and dark. And I reached out to a guy named Marcus Capone, who runs something called Vet Solutions, one of the largest organizations to help, get guys the psychedelic treatment. I did this also because I tried the gamut with the VA of SSRIs. They just weren't effective. I'm SSRI resistant, whatever that means. All I know is that it doesn't work, and the quality of life sucks when you're on them. And in short, the results that I found were profoundly transformative. They were transformative to a life-changing measure that I never even thought was possible on a scale akin to the birth of my son. It was that much of a big deal, and I recognized things about myself in terms of my own capability to have emotion and to feel emotion and to open that emotion up and to recognize how much I'd closed that off because of combat deployments and the need to be able to function day after day in that environment, and the fact that I'm not in that environment anymore. And so it took this kind of a medicine. It didn't take therapy. It took this kind of a medicine. I will advocate, though, that this kind of a medicine with psychotherapy, I think, is the most effective. So I don't want to give the wrong impression by saying that. But simple psychotherapy was not going to do the job.
For the record, my name is Eduardo Martinez. According to the CDC, 603 Nevadans committed suicide in 2020. In 2019, it was 642. Many of these Nevadans are veterans. Many are former law enforcement officers. Many are firefighters. Bill. I'm a Marine Corps veteran who served in Afghanistan in 2012, and I have worked with the veterans community in different capacities since 2017. For the past decade, as awareness of suicide among our veterans grew, so did a wider awareness of the ongoing mental health epidemic our state is suffering from. In recent years, many Nevadans were pushed to the edge with the Route 91 shooting, the isolation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and increased tensions between our law enforcement communities and the public they were sworn to protect. Prior to these crises and following since, many Nevadans have suffered from PTSD, major depressive disorder, anxiety, and many other mental health conditions that are unfortunately contributing to the instances of suicide in our state. Many are frontline healthcare workers and everyday colleagues. However, what often isn't discussed how some actually managed to avoid this tragic fate because they found something that worked. Sometimes this was church, volunteerism, community involvement, access to a mental health provider. But for some, this has been through a substance called psilocybin. Today, we are here. Today, many Nevadans attempt to self-medicate. As is, it's difficult to find mental health providers that are affordable, potentially accept your insurance, and if you do have insurance, and finally, if they can see you in a timely fashion. If the stars aligned, then you hope that you found the right provider who can truly offer help. Unfortunately, for some, hope is dashed when they finally do connect with a provider, and either because of a personality clash or a lack of effectiveness in the existing therapeutics, this leads to that hope, unfortunately, falling away. This leads many down to the path of self-medication for their depression, PTSD, anxiety, or potentially as well as for their end-of-life anxiety. With our current laws, we implicitly say it's okay to do it, to self-medicate if it's with alcohol, with gambling, antidepressants that make you numb to the world. How somehow our state has created a perverse incentive for our veterans, law enforcement officers, and everyday Nevadans to think it's better to turn to the bottle of alcohol to ease their pain than access this natural medicine that's anti-addictive and enables a person to heal from an experience versus simply numbing out. Are there risks associated with psilocybin? Yes. Just like anything else, it's a substance that should be used responsibly, but because of our nation's laws, both the public and our scientific communities often lack an understanding of it because the people most knowledgeable in this substance fear prosecution. Some organizations say we fail to appreciate the risk associated with the substance. We disagree. SB 242 creates a working group that raises awareness on both the benefits and the risk associated with the substance. As written, this working group includes 3 members that are explicitly asked to bring their medical and scientific expertise to the substance. Nearly 10 years ago, a fellow Marine and I had the responsibility to inform the mother of another Marine of the untimely passing of their son. Since that time, I've seen how the lack of access to mental health providers, and for many others, the lack of effective treatment options, have created distress in our mental health providers community, broken the bonds of family, and contributed to many families also having to suffer this devastation. Committee members, we ask for your support on SB 242.
Good afternoon, Scott Rutledge, Argentum Partners for the record. I'm here on behalf of Deep Roots Harvest. We're in full support of the things that were said. I have friends who've had some personal experiences with some of these substances that we've talked about today, and I can tell you that life-changing is not a superfluous term here. And obviously, if you go, it was mentioned earlier, you can Google mushrooms, and the literature that's out, the films and the podcasts and all of that information, I think is an overwhelming body of evidence that this does work, and we should definitely go forward in Nevada with a program. Just so you know, the state of Connecticut has an assisted therapy program that's launching. State of Oregon does as well. So we won't certainly be the first to propose something like this in the future, but definitely would like to see Nevada take a leadership role. So thank you again for your time.
This bill. For the record, my name is Kate Cotter. I'm co-founder and executive director of Nevada Coalition for Psychedelic Medicines and Sierra Psychedelic Society. I've devoted my life to education and advocacy around psychedelic medicines because of the profound healing I've personally experienced from natural remedies such as psilocybin. I suffered from a lifelong treatment-resistant anxiety disorder, punctuated by deep bouts of depression, both of which led to substance issues, which I battled for years. Decades of therapy and pharmaceutical medications were ineffective at treating these conditions. Psilocybin was the key to resolving the anxiety, depression, and substance issues. The neurogenesis and neuroplasticity that was initiated by psilocybin allowed me to repattern and smooth out deeply rutted neural grooves. This process is well documented in the scientific literature, and I can personally testify to the astonishing healing that these medicines can offer. I'm happier and healthier than I've ever been, and it would be accurate to say that I owe my life to this medicine. We can reference countless studies from beacon academic institutions such as Johns Hopkins, Stanford, Harvard, UC Berkeley, UC Davis, NYU, Imperial College London, just to name a few, showing the efficacy of psychedelic medicines such as psilocybin for treating depression, anxiety, PTSD, addiction, OCD, eating disorders. Several of these studies show lasting improvement at the 6 or 12-month mark after only 1 or 2 doses. These classic psychedelic compounds are not a panacea, nor are they safe for some to use, but they are a remarkable and effective alternative to pharmaceutical medications that often largely prove ineffective and carry with them an array of detrimental side effects. Compounds like psilocybin show tremendous therapeutic potential, and we are proud that Nevada will join the conversation alongside 17 other states with active legislation on this issue. SB 242 is a critical step toward investigating these life-saving therapies and bringing healing to our communities and state. I humbly urge you to support this bill. Thank you for your time and attention.
Record, my name is Andrew LaPilbut. I'm the chairman of the United Veterans Legislative Council for Nevada. representing all the veterans in our state. We started off 3 months ago with this bill in opposition. I grew up in that era of the hippies we heard about, and I was the opposite side of that program back then. So anything drug-wise, our group was pretty anti of any kind. Anyway, so we got educated over the last 3 months. That's an amazing thing. Most of us should try it sometimes. And we learned a lot about it and a lot of the promising effects that can exist. And of course, our biggest concern as a veterans group is those suicides. And we see the potential here. We moved from opposition to neutral the last time we testified. And now we've moved all the way up to we are highly in favor of this working group, and let's get it done so we can save more Nevadans. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John Puro from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. You may wonder what a public defender's nexus to this is. I thought when I became a lawyer that I would just yell objection at John Jones, tell him he was out of order, and just win cases. However, we deal with a significant mental health crisis, and what we don't deal with on the front end, we deal with in the criminal justice system. It's a highly ineffective place to deal with that. I am also a veteran. And there are a lot of my friends that have suffered a lot of trauma that are still dealing with that from their time in the military. And this is an avenue to help people. And obviously, we move slower. The original bill I liked a lot better than the pared down bill. But I know that, as my friend James Orenshaw says, Senator James Orenshaw, you come to this building and you don't get revolution, you get evolution. And so this is the first step in the evolution, and we hope to be back next session with data to move us even further along. Strongly urge your support. Thank you.
Barry Cole, B-A-R-Y-C-O-L-E, psychiatrist, neurologist. I learned in my MPA program incrementalism is how government works. You don't get it in the first session. It takes 3 sessions to get what you really want. Entheogens are as old as time. They're probably a lot older than psychiatry, psychology, and religion if we really think about it. This bill is vanilla. It literally doesn't legalize anything. It says we should ask questions. We should actually study. We might actually learn something. And if we study these compounds, we might actually understand how best to use them and for whom they should be used. Opponents will say there's a chance a young person will be exposed and develop some serious mental illness, perhaps schizophrenia. I want to reassure you or educate you that the frequency of schizophrenia is 1 per 100 regardless. So whether young people use these products or not, 1 in 100 will eventually be schizophrenic. That's biology. We heard about neuroplasticity. That explains chronic everything: chronic pain, chronic depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. This is such an important topic that Nevada Psychiatric Association, not known for radical liberalism, is going to devote an 8-hour pre-conference on Valentine's Day next year, February 14th, in Las Vegas. Be there or be square. We're doing 8 hours on psychedelics and their role in psychiatry. I'm going to see if I can get the entire legislature comped. I'm still working on it. There's too many vets who've done too many tours. It used to be you went to Vietnam for 13 months if you were Marine, 12 months if you were Army. Now you go to like someplace 8, 10, 12 times. I'm amazed how many combat tours I've had patients tell me about. Psychotropic meds are not rapid acting. I want to remind you, an antidepressant takes 1 to 2 months to become effective. Electroconvulsive therapy takes 1 to 2 weeks before you begin to see the change. These entheogens might be able to start helping people literally in hours to days, and you've heard the treatment effect goes on for months, maybe a year. I thank my neurobiology colleagues in Las Vegas, and I hope that you'll consider supporting SB 242. And as a final statement, my favorite mushroom is technically a porcini. And as for when men develop full consciousness, Mr. Hafen, you need to talk with my wife. She'll say we never do.
There are other states that are doing more clinical programs. I know, and they might be able to talk to it when they come up here to testify, but I know even here in Carson Tahoe, at Carson Tahoe Hospital, they are looking at expanding and collaborating with Stanford University to study the effects of this on and do clinical studies here in collaboration with Stanford. Johns Hopkins also has a pretty extensive program, as does, I think, New York University as well.
Dr. Dustin Hines for the record. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Peters and esteemed members. It's with great honor and appreciation that I'm here today to help present Senate Bill 242, and I really want to thank Senator Nguyen for bringing this bill forward and inviting us to present with her. As I said, my name is Dr. Dustin Hines. I'm an assistant professor at UNLV, and I hold a doctorate in neuroscience, and I've had over 20 plus years researching extensively therapies for disorders of mental health.
Dr. Rochelle Hines for the record. I'm an associate professor at UNLV, and I have a PhD in neuroscience. I also have over 20 years of experience studying the way the brain communicates through chemical neurotransmitters and receptors in the brain. And together, Dustin and I operate a lab that studies the effects of substances with therapeutic potential. We hold a DEA researcher registration and currently access a variety of substances under this registration. Our work is published in top journals in the field, and we are both highly cited researchers. And so it's really this experience that we bring for your consideration today.
And, you know, it's amazing because I've heard everyone announce themselves and their titles before, so I really don't have to tell anyone here that Nevada is facing a mental health crisis. Nevada's suicide rate, and I get emotional every time I say that, is nearly double the national average, and suicide is the second leading cause of death for people between ages of 10 and 34 in Nevada. Nevada is also home to over 218,000 veterans, but our veterans need better mental health support to address PTSD, operator syndrome, and just to provide a better quality of life and decrease the chance of death by suicide. As a scientist with careers that have focused largely on finding novel or innovative mental health care components, we are here to talk about the growing body of scientific information and evidence suggesting that psilocybin, a naturally occurring psychedelic compound found in certain species of mushrooms, has the potential to be a safe and effective treatment for multiple mental health conditions, including PTSD.
Dr. Rochelle Hines for the record. Studies have shown that psilocybin can bring relief for patients suffering with PTSD, treatment-resistant depression, and substance use disorder. One study conducted at Johns Hopkins University found that a single dose of psilocybin, when combined with psychotherapy, was associated with significant reductions in depression and anxiety symptoms in patients with life-threatening cancer. A recent New England Journal of Medicine article demonstrated that a single moderate dose of psilocybin, along with psychological support, provided significant relief of treatment-resistant depression symptoms for at least 3 weeks, and many patients experienced longer beneficial effects. Another study published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology found that psilocybin-assisted therapy was more effective than conventional treatments for smoking cessation. And an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that heavy drinking days were significantly reduced in patients with alcohol use disorder following psilocybin-assisted therapy.
Dustin Hines for the record. We're also beginning to understand, both in our lab and other labs, and this is really cool research on how this works. And what we know is that psilocybin increases something called neuroplasticity. Plasticity is the capacity for the brain to change, and it does this at the level of these little connections called synapses. By making these new synapses, they can lead to long-lasting brain changes and brain function. And a recent study, again published in the Journal of Neuropharmacology, showed that psilocybin promotes the growth of new connections of neurons and thereby strengthening the existing neurons.
Rochelle Hines again for the record. While some may be concerned about the potential for psilocybin to be abused, studies have shown that it has a low potential for abuse. As already noted, evidence in fact suggests that psilocybin may actually be effective in treating the abuse of other substances like alcohol and nicotine. Other epidemiological studies have shown that lifetime psilocybin use is in fact associated with lower odds of opioid use disorder. And research also shows that psilocybin has a wide therapeutic window with little to no toxic effect on the body or brain. And in fact, we know that psilocybin has been used safely by experienced practitioners of traditional medicine in multiple cultures for millennia. And recent major national surveys indicate low rates of abuse, low rates of treatment seeking, and low rates of reported harm resulting from psilocybin use. A recent study indicates 0.06% adverse event in a study of over 9,000 patients.